your allies. We're your friends. But we need to build a strong two nations, not fight each other.
Premier Doug Ford calling for conciliation on American airwaves, even as he rips up a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's satellite company Starlink. Good afternoon. Ford made the announcement this morning saying Ontario will also ban other American companies from provincial contracts going forward.
The move comes after he ordered the LCBO to remove American liquor from its shelves beginning tomorrow. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has been following the trade war. A lot to digest. She joins us live now with the latest. Siobhan.
Well, the Progressive Conservative leader says this trade war isn't one that Ontario started, but the province is prepared to push back. And one of the options on the table is those government contracts that can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Doug Ford said in his capacity as premier, he would bar U.S. firms from bidding from contracts here in Ontario. Arriving at his campaign office here in Etobicoke this morning, the premier said that down to building something as minute as a doghouse, those contracts should be going to Ontario firms at the very least. If that's not possible, Canadian firms. And he's encouraging cities across Ontario to do the same. Now, Ontario's deal with Elon Musk's Starlink was a huge one, $100 million to provide high-speed internet to rural communities. Ford thinks Ontario can make a good case in court for stepping away from this deal, arguing that the U.S. has broken existing trade negotiations or existing trade deals.
I don't care if there's a fine or whatever, but I think we're going to win it. This is principle. You know, he's part of the Trump team that wants to destroy families' incomes, destroy businesses. He wants to take food off the table of people, hardworking people, and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'll do whatever it takes to protect Ontario, protect the people, protect the jobs and the communities here.
Ford wasn't able to give us a number of how much money Ontario could be on the hook for getting out of that deal if the courts don't see it his way. I have asked Infrastructure Ontario for that number. They haven't responded yet. Reporting live from Etobicoke, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. And mayors of border cities have been expressing their concerns about the U.S. tariffs. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkin says there will be impacts on both sides of the border.
This is equivalent to being a circular firing squad. And so it's hard to believe, and when you hear the president and the clip that you played in the lead up to this interview talk about he'll play the game if Canada wants to play the game, I'm not sure what game we're playing, and I think that's part of the problem. There's the uncertainty created by the president in terms of what is the target we're trying to reach. Notionally, it was about border security and fentanyl. Listen, if those are the two main issues, great. We have a shared goal to try and resolve those two collective problems.
And the impact of the U.S. tariffs is also set to be felt right here in Toronto.
Mayor Olivia Chow and her allies gathered today to outline a potential response. For more, we're joined by CTV's Natalie Johnson at City Hall. Natalie.
That's right, Nathan. The mayor announcing here at City Hall this morning the municipal response to the Trump tariffs, which of course put enormous pressure on the city budget and pose a serious risk to Toronto's economy. The mayor reinforcing today that the city will be working hand in hand with the provinces and the federal government to support jobs and enhance economic resilience. Part of that will include a citywide push to buy local and buy Canadian to support local businesses. The city manager, who is the top bureaucrat here, has been tasked with delivering an action plan. The details on what that might include at this point are not clear. The mayor was asked whether that plan could potentially include excluding U.S. companies from municipal contracts or even canceling existing contracts, as we are seeing being done at the provincial level. The mayor says everything is on the table, but again, still waiting on the specifics of what that plan might look like. Here's more from the mayor and members of council a few minutes ago.
Toronto is home to world-class manufacturers, a thriving financial sector, small businesses and artists who are the backbone of Canada's economy. To combat these unfair trade actions, we must strengthen our local industries and create new opportunities right here at home. When we support local businesses, we strengthen our economy and our communities.
We want to stay the course with this budget because it does meet the challenges that the city is facing right now. It meets the challenges that Torontonians in the tens of thousands told us to please address. And so we want to continue to do that because there may be hardship coming if this trade war, it's a senseless trade war brought on by the American government, but if it lasts for any period of time, we know that down the road, it will not just be raining, it will be pouring.
Today's announcement comes up a little bit short. This is a plan for a plan. And you're right, when you look at Premier Ford's leadership on this, when you look at premiers across the country, when you look at the federal government, they knew this was coming. And it's because it's been telegraphed very clearly from President Trump that this was his intention. I think we should have taken him at his word, and we certainly should have looked at some of this stuff in advance so that, we weren't calling a press conference last minute on a Monday morning saying we're going to look into this, because Torontonians are going to be feeling the impacts tomorrow.
And certainly this economic uncertainty comes at a time when the city is working to firm up its municipal budget for the year ahead. Any kind of inflation or increase to the cost of goods that come as a result of these tariffs will hit the city coffers hard. The mayor was asked, how the city might pay for this. She said those reserves are in place for rainy days. And in her words, rainy days are now upon us. Reporting live at City Hall, Natalie Johnson, Michelle and Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Local restaurants and bars are among the businesses that will be significantly impacted by the trade war.
Establishments are already working on dealing with issues, including the removal of U.S. liquor from the LCBO. CTV's Sean Leithong has been following this story. He joins us live with more. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, the trickle-down effect of these tariffs and the decisions by the premier to pull booze off the shelves may be first felt at these bars and restaurants. We do know that Premier Doug Ford had said that they will be taking alcohol, American alcohol, out of the LCBO. They're saying that we buy $100 million annually in American booze, but also the idea that food travels so much between our two countries, and that is subject to 25% tariffs unless there is some sort of exemption that is felt. Now, through the day today, we had been talking to people outside the LCBO and yesterday, and also we spoke to Kelly Higginson from Restaurants Canada about how intertwined the food industry is and what we will see.
They're putting a tariff on us, and then we have to fight back.
We all have to do our part to support Canada. So from now on, I guess I'll buy Canadian whiskey.
I'm going to try and buy as much Canadian products as I can.
The reality is we have products from Saskatchewan, that goes down to the States to be made into buns for hamburgers, comes back. It's made from beef from Alberta that goes back down to be processed in Iowa. So, there's a lot of back and forth, and it is very concerning. So we are hoping that we can look at food as essential and have these, removed from any tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. But to be said, we are very supportive of the provincial and federal governments in doing what they have to do to protect Canadian interests and to support Canada.
So one of the questions may be when it comes to alcohol, American alcohol in places like the restaurant behind me, whether they will actually have to pull things off the shelf effective tomorrow, or if they will sell what product they have and they simply won't be able to replenish it. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Nathan, Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. And still to come, as the Ontario election campaign continues, the opposition is reacting to Ford's response to U.S. tariffs. We'll have those details a little later in the newscast.
A man is dead following an industrial accident in the West End. Police say the man fell while working on a billboard near Bathurst and DuPont. It happened shortly after 8:30 a.m. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. The Ministry of Labor has taken over the investigation.
A man in his 20s is dead following a crash in Oshawa. This happened early this morning on Grandview Street between Beatrice Street and Grand Lee Court. A man was removed from a vehicle which had flipped onto its side. He was rushed to hospital where he later died. The cause of this crash is still under investigation.
2 pedestrians have been injured after being struck by a vehicle in Cabbagetown this morning. It happened just before 6 a.m. near River and Gerrard Street. Police say a woman in her 50s was taken to hospital with serious injuries, while a man in his 50s suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The driver involved remained at the scene, and so far there's been no word on whether charges will be laid.
The murder trial of two teen girls charged in the swarming death of a homeless man is set to begin today. The girls are charged with second-degree murder and have chosen to be tried by judge alone. They are among 18 charged in the death of 59-year-old Kenneth Lee back in December of 2022. Since then, 3 have pleaded guilty to manslaughter and 1 to assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm. All 4 have been sentenced to probation. A jury trial is set to begin in May for the remaining 2 girls. The response to U.S. tariffs has been dominating discussion on day 6 of Ontario's election campaign.
The opposition is weighing in on the moves that Doug Ford has been making, outlining what they would do differently. CTV's Mike Walker has been following the latest from the campaign trail and joins us now with more. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, the other party leaders attacking Doug Ford's record on housing and auto manufacturing while raising concerns about the impact these tariffs will have on those sectors. We'll start with the NDP leader who was in Oshawa, home of a General Motors assembly plant where Marit Stiles detailed her plan to protect workers. Stiles vowed an NDP government would implement a federal provincial income support program, direct agencies to procure locally, and will work with trade-exposed industries like the auto sector to help create new supply chains. Now, Stiles did not provide any details on how much this would cost, but said she would work with the federal government on a stimulus plan.
As Premier, I'm telling you today that I will build a more tariff-proof Ontario. An NDP government will work with local industries to help them find new Canadian and international markets. We're going to reduce internal trade barriers here in Canada, and we're going to redouble our efforts to promote Ontario-made goods.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is in Kitchener today, where he criticized the Ford government for housing starts being at a historic low, while he says costs have spiked. Schreiner also raised concerns that those costs will only escalate amid the trade war and detailed the Greens' first-time homebuyers plan.
This is a plan designed to drive down the cost of housing and build 2 million homes over the next decade by, first of all, legalizing fourplexes and 4-story as of right across the province and legalizing sixplexes in cities over 500,000 population.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie is in the Kitchener area today, and less than a half hour from now will detail her plans to fight Trump's tariffs at the Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. 7 Toronto daycares that told parents they would be opting out of the national $10 a day childcare program have decided to stay in the system. A letter to parents from Sunnyside Daycare says the fee for all posts will now be roughly $478 a month. The 7 daycares made up half of the 14 locations in the city which had planned to withdraw from the program at the start of the year. Sunnyside says it had further conversations with government representatives, the city, and other daycare operators, and responded to concerns from parents about the impact of leaving the program.
There's a subway disruption for commuters to be aware of heading into the work week. Starting tonight and continuing through Thursday, a stretch of Line 1 will be closing at 11 p.m. between Finch and St. Clair stations. The closure will allow for track work in the area. Shuttle buses will run each night until around 2 in the morning.
More news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. Definitely looking gray out there, lots of cloud cover, but relatively mild for a nice skate on the ice at Nathan Phillips Square. And we are in for a chance as a result of rain or perhaps snow set to start this afternoon. Let's bring in Jessica Smith with a look at the current conditions and what we can expect, Jess.
It's a little messy, Michelle, as we kick off the first full week of February, but mild, as you mentioned. We're looking at a bit of a system sitting just north of the GTA, impacting us in the way of that wet snow throughout the day. But because we are so mild, all things considered, we're looking at this falling more as rain and really not accumulating much on the ground for us here in the GTA. Different story, though, for our friends who are kind of making their way towards areas a little closer to Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. They are under a winter weather travel advisory as that line of flurries kind of makes its way all the way across to eastern Ontario and then into portions of southern Quebec. But as we make our way through at least this midpoint of our day, we're still pretty warm. We're sitting at +1. We're kind of dealing with a little bit of a wind chill, but not much. We're looking at a northwesterly wind kicking up a little later on in the day today, and then we see that transition of that messy weather. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast. Right now, it's back over to Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thank you, Jess. We return now to our top story, the trade war between Canada and the U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed executive orders to place 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods, while Canadian energy will be subject to a 10% levy. Those measures are set to take effect tomorrow. In response, Ottawa is imposing 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of American products. And for more on the trade battle, we're joined live by CTV's Scott Hurst. So, Scott, the 25% tariff the U.S. is going to impose on Canadian goods is steep. How will this affect Canadians right away?
Nathan, there's no doubt that this would be a shock to our economy. Many Canadians for the past several weeks might have just assumed that this was just a ongoing, lingering threat. But now that Donald Trump has said these tariffs will go into effect on Tuesday, we're now less than 24 hours away from this becoming a painful economic reality. A 25% tariff could shrink Canada's GDP, further weaken our dollar. It's already at the lowest in more than 20 years. And for Canadian households, it would ultimately cost an average of $1,900 more annually, according to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. 2.3 million Canadian jobs are tied to U.S. exports. So right away, you have to assume that that creates a whole lot of uncertainty and a whole lot of instability, as Canadians are now worried about their own jobs that are tied to U.S. exports. But also this will disrupt entire industries like automotive, agriculture, and the energy sector, ultimately making everything from groceries to gas to cars much more expensive. Bottom line, it'll be a huge economic hit and create a whole host of issues when it comes to the Canadian economy. According to new numbers from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, a strong majority, more than 80% of businesses, said it would be impacted by tariffs in some way. And because of that impact, Nathan, more than 2/3 of small businesses said they'd be forced to increase prices on consumers to offset the impact of the tariffs.
You know, there's a lot of buzz, especially on social media, about buying Canadian. What are some examples of how we can buy Canadian?
Nathan, that might be harder than a lot of people might assume when it comes to specifically buying Canadian, because our supply chains and our markets have been intertwined because of trade agreements for many decades now. Buying Canadian isn't so easy. The automotive industry, for example, we're often hearing about products going back and forth the border multiple times before even reaching the consumer. But when it comes to a consumer level, as you mentioned, there is this push leaning into this buying Canadian sentiment. And so when you go to the liquor store, as we're seeing in British Columbia and here in Ontario, restricting access to things like California wine or Tennessee whiskey, but also going to the grocery store, Canadians have the ability to make choices and buy Canadian products, and ultimately giving some of the power back to consumers when it comes to where they put their money, Nathan.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst on this U.S.-Canada trade war. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
And on that note, Donald Trump also spoke to Mexico's leader this morning and agreed to pause tariffs against America's southern border for 1 month. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum spoke following her call with her American counterpart. She says Mexico will immediately reinforce its border with 10,000 National Guard troops, and the U.S. has committed to working to prevent high-powered weapons from being trafficked to Mexico. Trump says negotiations will continue, and he will participate in talks along with the heads of the U.S. State, Treasury, and Commerce departments. The New York Times is reporting that a senior Canadian government official says Ottawa is not optimistic there will be a similar off-ramp from tariffs for Canada.
NATO Secretary General says he is absolutely convinced the alliance can deal with trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada. Mark Rutte believes it won't affect NATO's collective defense. He was in Brussels today insisting the next defense spending pledge from the group will be considerably higher than the current 2% of GDP.
We have to ramp up defense spending, we have to ramp up defense production. The exact level of defense spending we will decide later this year based on the capability targets. We are now assessing the gaps with each of the allies between where we are and where we should be, and based on that, the capability targets will, based on that, be decided upon, and based on that we will decide on the new defense spending pledge.
Rutte attended an informal defense retreat with leaders of the European Union. Canada is one of the few NATO countries that is yet to meet the 2% threshold. The Trudeau government has pledged to meet that goal by 2032.
China's government says it will take action against a 10% tariff from U.S. President Donald Trump. Beijing has not specified what countermeasures it may take, but it plans on filing a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization. China calls the U.S. tariffs a serious violation of international trade rules and a setback to the trade relationship between the two nations.
European leaders are warning that Trump's threats to expand tariffs to the European Union could risk igniting a trade war across the Atlantic. Trump has warned the 27 nations which make up the European Union that they are next in line following the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Many EU leaders say the tariffs risk will backfire as the European bloc has consistently exported more goods to the U.S. than it has imported. However, shares in European automakers fell today amid concerns about the impact of tariffs.
Meanwhile, Trump is shutting down the U.S. Agency for International Development. Staff have been instructed to stay out of the agency's headquarters in Washington, D.C.
It's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
At least 600 employees were reportedly locked out of the agency's computer system overnight. It all comes as Elon Musk leads a civilian review of the federal government with the president's approval. U.S. aid oversees humanitarian development and security programs in roughly 120 countries. Jess?
Well, it's a mild and messy start to the work and school week as we see a system sitting just north of the GTA, bringing a little bit of a rain-snow mix. But it is mild, so maybe a bit of a positive there. We're not looking at too much in the way of any flash freezing. Temperature-wise, as we head into the afternoon, sitting around 3 degrees. The norm is -2, a light northwesterly wind, but it gets a little cold as we head through the overnight. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast as we settle into February.
Returning to our top story, the trade war between Canada and the U.S. and the overwhelming reaction from Canadians.
Over the weekend, sports fans expressed their anger booing the American national anthem at several games, including here in Toronto. CTV's Raheem Ladani's been following this story and joins us live now with more. Raheem.
Nathan and Michelle, good afternoon. I can tell you I had a friend who was at the Raptors game yesterday, and he told me the atmosphere was quite charged during the national anthems. In fact, he said there were 2 individuals behind him who actually got into an argument because one person refused to stand for the U.S. national anthem. And so we're very clearly seeing the effect and emotional impact that this current political environment is having on people on the ground here in the city and across the country. A chorus of boos rang through Scotiabank Arena Sunday afternoon, with Raptors fans voicing their displeasure amidst the political turmoil between Canada and the United States.
The friendship between the people of US and Canada, it's kind of getting tarnished because of what the government is doing, and I think even people right now, they want to do something, but they feel powerless. Hence, they are doing something like this. You know, you can rub it off as like stupid or childish, but what it really is, people are trying to do something to express their disappointment.
I can understand why they're doing it, but it's the wrong thing to do, obviously. But you can't blame people for being so frustrated.
Over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump declared an economic emergency, placing 25% tariffs on all Canadian and Mexican imports, along with a 10% tax on energy imports from Canada.
Donnie and his madmen? Yeah. What a crew, eh?
We were always friends and allies, and I feel like Trump is dividing us.
Those moves sparked a trend at National Hockey League games hours later. In the nation's capital, fans drowned out the American anthem, voicing their discontent. Nearby, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was announcing retaliatory tariffs and was asked about the public resentment.
Sure, we're going through a difficult time right now, and yeah, emotions may run high here and there, particularly around hockey games. But I know we're going to make it through this because we have the most successful partnership the world has ever seen, and it's a true value in this time of really challenging geopolitical instability.
A Canada-first approach, which turned the boos into cheers.
Now, it's also important to note that this isn't the first time world events have seeped into the sports arena. In the early 2000s, we also saw the U.S. national anthem booed at Canadian sporting events as people voiced their displeasure of the U.S.-led war into Iraq. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. I'll send it back to you both in studio.
All right, thank you, Raheem. I'm switching gears, and it's kind of nice to do that today. Talk about the weather. I'm back. I was in Jamaica for a week, and it was freezing when I arrived. I guess it was early Saturday morning, but now it's, I guess, more comfortable.
You picked a good time because you missed some really frigid days, and we definitely got some snow. I mean, today it feels really mild compared to what we had. It's cold at times over the weekend, but it's going to be messy.
It is. We're doing kind of weather whiplash. So you returned on one of the coldest days over the weekend, and then into Sunday, we saw a massive shift. The jet stream kind of moved a little bit, and we really saw a rebound in temperatures. This week, we go from seasonal to just above to just below, off and on, really for the next 5 to 7 days. So prepare for almost everything as we head through the week ahead. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, a shot earlier today out in Richmond Hill, they got a little more snow out there, but you're starting to feel that really wet, heavy snow because temperatures are doing that kind of fluctuation thing. So the people that probably don't mind, or the individuals that don't mind, I should say, are the dogs out there. We're holding on to temperatures kind of at or just around the seasonal mark off and on throughout the week ahead, and we're dealing with messy weather throughout the day today thanks to a system making its way just north of the GTA. Temperature-wise, we're sitting at +1, no real wind chill for us, but Northern Ontario, a much different story, significantly colder. And there is a plume of cold air that's kind of overtaken the prairies, and it's creeped its way in towards Northern Ontario. We're looking at these special weather statements in place from Owen Sound right across to Ottawa and in towards portions of southern Quebec, right along that borderline. And that's as a line of flurries makes its way through, associated with the cold front. So for us here in the GTA, the bulk of this is just north of us, but we're getting kind of the tail end of it, and that's where that messy weather comes for us today in the way of a little bit of mixing or wet snow. But because it is relatively mild, we'll sit at 3 degrees. We're not looking at much in the way of accumulation, so maybe a bit of a trade-off. We're holding on to temperatures, again, just above seasonal today, then we get back to where we should be as we head into the day tomorrow, but it's short-lived. Into this evening, dropping down to -3, just a hint of a wind chill, feeling a little closer to the seasonal point. But for our friends in Eastern Ontario, it is significantly chillier. As we head throughout the day today, we'll see that line of flurries along with that cold front push their way out, so it's not an all-day kind of messy weather affair. Behind it, though, a few troughs will impact us in the way of some flurries off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. But for the GTA, the downtown core, this afternoon, this evening, and into the day tomorrow, we do get a little bit of a break. So timing it all out again as we head into the early evening, still dealing with some of that messy weather. So give yourself a little extra time for that commute home. And as we head in towards around 10 p.m., the bulk of this system is going to be completely gone. So right across central, southern Ontario, a little cloudy. Into our Tuesday, we'll see those flurries again, those streamers off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That's that trough behind the low. But for the GTA, the downtown core, we're holding on to a little bit of sunshine. Not a brilliantly sunny day by any means, but significantly lighter. And that sunshine does a lot to help boost the mood. As we head in towards our Tuesday evening, a little cloud cover returns. And then heading into Wednesday, it gets a little chilly, but at least we'll see a little bit of sunshine. So we're kind of doing this battle between temperatures around the seasonal mark, and we're at the mercy of the jet stream a little bit over the next couple of days. So again, we are above seasonal today. We're pretty much on par for seasonal tomorrow. We're below seasonal in part as we head into Wednesday. So it's one of those weeks, if you suffer from pressure headaches, this might be a bit of a challenging week for you. But at least we get more sunshine through your Tuesday and Wednesday. We see the return of another system heading in towards the end of the week. So a bit of messy weather through your Thursday, Friday, and in towards the weekend. Michelle, I'll send things back over to you.
Thank you, Yes, still to come on CTV News at noon, the power of memes amid the trade war between Canada and the U.S. We'll explain when we return.
As the trade conflict between the U.S. and Canada takes shape, many people will be watching to see how misinformation plays into the conflict. And a new study suggests internet memes might play an important role.
For more, we're joined by CTV science and technology specialist Dan Riskin. Memes. How are memes going to play into this? And what might their impact be?
Yeah, I mean, so as we go into this, it's very clear that there's an aggressor here, and it's very clear that Canada's just sort of sticking up for itself. But I think what we're going to find is over time, that narrative is going to change. And we're going to see a lot of misinformation around who started this, who's really the aggressor, things like that. And we can learn a lot of lessons from previous experiences, most notably COVID-19, where it started off, we've got this virus, we've got a whole bunch of doctors and medical professionals who are trying to make vaccines, and somehow everything got twisted so that the people who made the vaccines were the bad guys in that. And when you look at the Reddit streams and you look at how that misinformation grew, memes played a huge role. There's a new study out that shows that memes have this great ability to bring a whole bunch of people together who have different opinions when you get into the details, but it's just such a simple message about how everybody is a sheep and just following the leader, or aren't they dumb? We know what's true. Just very simple, polarizing messages are really effective at bringing people together. And so as we move through this trade conflict, I think one thing to watch for is very simple memes that come across that, you know, that make it much simpler than it really is, probably with Canada on the receiving end. So watch for that.
Nice to have a heads up on that.
Well, the topic for this one is perfect, the timing of it, because I just came back from vacation, and this is a study looking how to get a better recharge after a vacation.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're experiencing this right now, but you look at your mood before you go on vacation, you look at your mood when you get back from vacation, you get a lift. Everybody knows that. But how do you make a bigger lift, and how do you make the lift last longer? There's a new study. It's a big meta-analysis, a study of studies, and they find some really nice stuff. The number one thing is, unplug your phone. Stop checking work emails. Get off of work completely. If you don't do that, you're not going to get a regenerative effect from your vacation. The second thing is, if you can do any kind of exercise, moving around, if you go snorkeling or if you go skiing, depending where you are, those kinds of body movements are good to start with. But when you tie them into a vacation, they create a memory that has a longer lasting effect and gives you a bigger lift as you go back to work. And then the third piece is staycations actually work quite well. So if you have a vacation planned, let's say to the United States, and you're rethinking your plans, a staycation can give you just as big a lift as going somewhere. So it shouldn't rule those out. They count.
Well, I did both. I exercised and I also unplugged.
Nice.
As much as I could.
Well, that's of all the weeks to unplug. Yeah, it was a tough one, but you did a bit of it.
Back to what's going on.
What's going on?
Yeah. But this study shows that if you've done it right, which it looks like you have, that elevated mood can last more than 3 weeks. So good luck to you. I hope it sticks around.
Post-vacation glow. Let's talk about, finally, researchers have done a study on niceness and how it might actually make you happier. I've tried to tell my kids this, so I'd be curious about the science.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward study. It was done in Finland, and they took a whole bunch of people and they said, okay, here are 6 questions. I want you to say how you would fall on this scale. So, for example, if you go into a customer service situation and things are not going well with the customer service, but you talk to the agent, do you go out of your way to be nice to them because you know it's not really their fault, or do you just let them have it? And people that tend to be nice in that situation and others like it, when they fill out the other part of the questionnaire, also tend to be happier and have less depression. So the inference is, if you're somebody that goes out of the way to be nice, you're probably happier, although it's a correlation. So maybe happy people tend to be nicer. We don't know which way it goes yet, so future research is needed, but tell your kids, being nice is never a bad idea.
And you practice that. You're
I
nice
try to.
and happy. I know. Yeah, living proof. Thank you so much, CTV Science and Tech Specialist Dan Riskin. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
All right, to other news, the trade war with the U.S. and elections here at home have renewed concern about disinformation.
CTV's Judy Trin has more on the potential risks Canadians are facing.
Deciphering truth on social media is getting more difficult.
But the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation.
The commissioner's warning comes after investigating foreign interference. Shadowy states or individuals have the capability to weaponize artificial intelligence to undermine elections on a massive scale.
The deep fakes and the faked voices and the images that of people that never really happened. That kind of generative AI tool can be used to create content that seems like it's real. It can be used to create chaos.
World leaders in a rock band, obviously fake, but others are not as easy to detect. After a visit by Pierre Poilievre last summer, hundreds of posts on social media surfaced praising Poilievre. They were not real people. The Conservatives say they don't use bots. Researchers later found that it was one person using artificial intelligence to train an army of bots.
You can imagine what a foreign government could do, or what a really nefarious actor could do, or a political campaign themselves could do.
NDP Charlie Angus currently represents Kirkland Lake. He's not running again. He's particularly worried about the social media platform X.
Mr. Elon Musk.
Billionaire Elon Musk has posted about Canadian politics. His mother was born in Saskatchewan. His company X has more than 600 million active users. Musk fired the fact checkers that removed wrong, misleading, and abusive posts. Now other social media companies like Meta are doing the same.
We are sleepwalking, I think, to what could be a very disastrous effect from an election that will be uglier than anything we've ever seen, where AI, deep fakes, bot technology is ramping up, and we are still living in the 1980s.
Parliament was considering two bills, one that offered Canadians some protection from bot networks and another that increased monitoring of political activity before elections. The legislation hit a dead end when Parliament was prorogued.
What can we do to stop it? Really not much. I mean, except question the information you're getting.
Commissioner Hogue has recommended that the federal government force social media companies to label their altered content. But that's unlikely to happen before the next election. That's because all the opposition party leaders are intent on voting non-confidence when Parliament resumes. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, there was a new top dog at the weekend box office. DreamWorks film Dog Man debuted at #1. The animated adventure stars the voice of Pete Davidson as a canine cop. It brought in $36 million US across North America. It also marked the third straight #1 debut for a DreamWorks animated film.
Still to come, Tim Hortons says it's returning the Roll Up the Rim to Win contest back to its roots. We'll have those details when we come back.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
The trade war between Canada and the U.S. has many Canadians adopting a buy Canadian mindset, with people banding together online to help others find local products. For more on this, we're joined live by Sam East, host with 99.9 Virgin Radio, for a new segment called Chronically Online. Welcome, Sam. I know great to have you with us. I know you have a list of some popular Canadian brands people can turn to, and it's tricky to, sometimes there's a label, but it is tricky to figure out what's all Canadian, what isn't. Can you outline some of them?
Yeah, so there's a pretty exhaustive list that's been making the rounds online. People chiming in and feeling very, I guess, patriotic and having that sense of solidarity. So some of the brands that you can look towards. So for cheese, for example, you want to go with Black Diamond, perhaps, instead of Kraft. Or this is a really big one that people are talking about online. French's instead of Heinz. Deli meats, this is an easy one to remember. Maple Leaf instead of something like Oscar Mayer. And then flour, if you're doing some baking, go with Robin Hood or Five Roses instead of Pillsbury.
You know, it's amazing, the conversation online in light of this, because essentially we're longtime friends, and to have this happen, I mean, we're planning a trip to Washington, D.C. It's like, maybe we don't go right now. What's your sense? It's been really overwhelming online to see how people are reacting and what they're calling for.
Yeah, you know, I think in times of kind of despair, it's nice to see, especially when you go into the comments section, people banding together. People are looking for answers, and it was so swift the way that the news about the tariffs dropped, and then the information with these lists started populating immediately, and people chiming in and adding more to it. So I think there's a real sense of solidarity to buy local, buy Canadian.
You were talking about food products. Any other products we should be looking out for, maybe putting our dollars there?
Yeah, I mean, I think skincare is a big one, too. It's a massive industry, skincare and cosmetics. So read those labels. Google's free. You have your phone on you anyway. Do the double check before you spend possibly a lot of money on an American product instead of a Canadian one.
It's funny. I was just last week at a store, and a woman came in, and I kind of overheard her saying, I'm buying a whole bunch of my favorite product because the tariffs are coming in. So people trying to get ahead, it makes you wonder if there will be a rush, you know, maybe people who like American alcohol, and then it's going to be pulled off the shelves.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the information is power here, and that's when it's very powerful online to see communities banding together and keeping that conversation going. They hear it from you on the news, and they do their homework, too, at home, which is great to see.
Well, since we have you, Sam East of Virgin Radio, can we talk about the Grammys? What a show last night. What's the reaction been like online?
Oh my God, it's hard to narrow it down for our chat here, but two things in particular. Let's talk about Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar, who's been in this well-known feud with our very own boy Drake, our Canadian boy, won several awards, including Song of the Year and Record of the Year for Not Like Us, which, as you may well know, is very much a diss track against our very own Drake. Now, while that in itself is something to behold, look at what he's wearing. He is wearing a Canadian tuxedo.
Yes, I didn't notice that.
Denim. Yeah,
Wow.
he's looking good, and a lot of people online are commenting on perhaps this is on purpose. Maybe this is yet another jab against our Canadian boy.
Well, he's riding high right now. I'm definitely wondering, watching last night, what Drake fans are thinking, because he's been doing well in the war with Drake. He's also got the Super Bowl coming up.
Absolutely. A lot is going on for Kendrick Lamar. Another big night as well for Beyonce. It's been well documented that the Album of the Year award has evaded her for all the years that she's been in music. She won Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter, but she also won Country Album of the Year, which came as a huge shock to her. And now online, her reaction, the shocked face that she made when she was announced as the winner, is turning into a meme extravaganza, Michelle. Yeah, we got one here. When my bestie texts me about those plans I made when I was in a good mood, or when I run into someone from work in public, or a final one here, me at 3 a.m. realizing I overshared during a casual conversation. This meme, I think, will live on well beyond this Grammy night. So thank you, Beyonce, for your artistry and your genuine reaction there.
I'm surprised she was shocked. It was such a good album. Yeah, that's awesome. Some really funny memes there. And look forward to doing this again. Sam East on 99.9 Virgin Radio. You can catch it from 2 to 5 p.m. We appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Michelle.
Tim Horton says it's returning the Roll Up the Rim to Win contest back to its roots. The company says it will reintroduce roll-up cups when the promotion begins February 24th. The contest moved to a completely digital format in 2020 as part of an effort to prevent staff from having to handle cups during the COVID-19 pandemic. Participants will now show their winning rims before dropping their cups into a box. Customers will also still be able to participate online.
Coming up, making the most of winter weather. The freezing conditions have revived a popular skating event in Eastern Ontario after several years away. We'll tell you more after the break. Skaters in Eastern Ontario have been making the most of the frigid temperatures this winter.
The cold weather has brought back a popular skating event for the first time in 3 years. CTV's Jack Richardson has the story.
This is Big Rideau Lake in Portland, Ontario. And for the first time since 2022, it's the home of the Skate the Lake event.
We didn't have it for the last 2 years. We couldn't get on the ice.
Mild weather for each of the last 2 winters prevented volunteers from running the popular event. But Ken Maxwell is thankful this season is a different story.
We've got probably 18, 19 inches of ice out there. It was 14 or 15 when we first started doing the oval this year. And with this cold weather, it's been getting deeper. So, and it's good ice. It's really good ice.
To participate, skaters just need to log how many laps they've taken around the oval online. And a weekly leaderboard is updated to Facebook every Monday.
And this is his 3rd year participating.
Leela Stafford's son Henry says he's done 26 laps already this winter.
Every year the rink is open, we're out on it.
They moved to Portland a few years ago, and having this so close by is something they don't take for granted.
It's incredible having this in our backyard. It's great to be able to get the kids off the school bus and come out here and meet our friends. And it's great to participate in Skate Lake Challenge.
The idea behind Skate the Lake is to help the community find ways to stay active during the winter. The oval totals about 1 kilometer in distance. And where else can you get a view quite like this?
It's been a great winter so far, so hopefully we'll be able to get out again.
You don't need to track your laps, though. Steve Warren and Heather Young are just out for a Sunday skate.
We usually would try to go into Ottawa to the canal, but we've been kind of busy, and this is beautiful and close to home.
A skating rink the size of this one takes hours of work and dedication, but it's just a few volunteers here that keep things running smoothly.
Oh, well, I retired as of January 1st and looking for something to do.
Aaron Bador is in charge of clearing snow. He's out there for about 4 or 5 hours every day.
I appreciate when I'm doing it and I'm done and I look out and there's people today skating out there. That's what makes it good for me.
Jack Richardson, CTV News, Portland.
Wow. If it's safe, then go out and do it.
I know, it's making us all want to hit the bodies of water, but we have had sort of seesaw temperatures. So cold on the weekend, and then today it felt rather mild.
It's not too bad, and where Jack is, you know, definitely colder, so it makes it easier, and they have people checking the ice, but as Nathan mentioned, if it's not safe, and it generally isn't for us here in the GTA, then you have to really think about sticking to the rinks that you're used to. Now, the good news is, temperature-wise today, it is mild, making it a little easier, but it's messy as a system with a cold front makes its way across. It's not an all-day snow affair, a little more so up towards areas through Owen Sound and reaching all the way out to Ottawa. For the GTA, the downtown core, it's more of a light drizzle or a wet snow. We're sitting at +1 right now. The wind chill not so much of a factor right now, but it does get significantly cooler as we head into the evening as we tiptoe towards a more seasonal point. As we step into this first full week of February, we're doing that seesaw, as Michelle mentioned. We go from positive to right around seasonal to just below and then somewhere in between. So you have to really prepare for everything. The really common denominator here is that it is going to be a little bit on the chilly side throughout the whole week ahead, and that includes some unsettled weather. So as you plan your commute over the next couple of days, give yourself that extra time. We're not looking at a significant amount of snow, but that little bit, that light layer definitely makes it tricky for the commute. Temperature-wise, we are just above seasonal throughout the day today. We get to a fairly seasonal point into our Tuesday. The sunshine starts to return, but as the cloud cover lifts, temperatures start to drop. So keep that in mind. It is cold as we head towards the end of the week.
All right. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here at CTV News, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.